Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Let's Eat. We are back for another episode. It is the first week of June, which means I think we're out of the woods. I think we are officially in more consistent warm weather. And after the winter that we've had, I said this on last week's episode, I dreamt of this week and this month for weeks back in January because of how dreadfully cold it was. And with the snow and everything, it was, it was something. It was something. So we are celebrating the warmth, celebrating and welcoming, warmly welcoming, eagerly, openly, aggressively, fervently welcoming the, how many adverbs can I add there? We are welcoming these mornings, these days, these longer days. I think every single year, and I don't, this year especially, I've really noticed the discrepancy between the day length in the cold months, in the winter months, and then the day length in the summer months. It baffles my mind. And I think I am so abruptly aware of it because you know me, I'm trying to go to bed at 8 o'clock, 8:30, and the sun is still very much in the sky. And so it's like, okay, even at my sister's, which she's in Michigan, it's still light there until probably like 9, 9:30. It's crazy. It is so crazy. I remember I was there in July a couple years ago, and I swear the sun was still up and it was heading towards 10 o'clock. It was so trippy and so hard for my brain to like comprehend what was going on, and obviously super inconvenient for someone like me who goes to bed as early as I do. But I'm not complaining because the longer days make for more time for walking, for sitting out on my deck, for just enjoying. My mood is better, but it's just crazy, especially even at in my 6 a.m. classes. 6 a.m.'s usually it's till like 6:30, 6:45 that the sun starts to come up, but now I'm starting class and the sun is fully up. So I think these are just things I'm noticing just in terms of like the length of the day. Like I've obviously experienced this for 31 years. I know how this works, but this year was the first year that I really started to kind of notice that and appreciate it, right? So, looking forward to the next several months. This upcoming month, we are officially, it is June 1st. Today is June 1st, and we have quite the month ahead in June, and it's all such great things. It's just, I think I get ahead of myself, and then I think too far ahead, and then I get overwhelmed by it. But the weekends are actually pretty crazy with Yap and Walk. And then I'm celebrating some of my girlfriend's birthdays one weekend. It's Father's Day one weekend. I was invited to this fitness event, which I'm really excited about in 2 weeks. So that's coming up. There's just a lot of things happening on the weekends, and then my weekdays are just packed. They are so packed. I'll talk more about this probably at the end of this month, but I had a few videos actually take on a lot of traction on TikTok. And I listen, just as an aside, TikTok is I understand the reputation that it has, and I understand just generally speaking how social media, like, how a lot of people feel about social media. And, I think there's obviously, there can be issues, right? And I understand that and I respect that. However, the growth that has come to my business as a result of using social media is that is my primary marketing tool. That is my resume, more or less. People looking at my page and looking at what I do and what I share and my knowledge, that is huge. And I know a lot of you listeners have, honestly, all of you listeners probably have come from my social media. Maybe some of you are working with me, and I'm sure, whether or not you came from me otherwise, or you referred to me, or whatever the case is, my platforms are really my opportunity to share on my life and what I know and what I do. And TikTok, especially with Yap and Walk, has really taken flight. And so I've increased my number of followers significantly. And it's not so much about the followers. And I want to be very clear too. I think I've shared this in past episodes, maybe my healthiest self episode or something, some episode. I don't look at my social media as client acquisition because this is so off topic, but here we are. Just because of the fact that I just don't feel good when I'm sharing in the with the intention of getting clients. Will I share that I'm accepting clients? Will I share that what labs can do and so forth? Yes, absolutely. I will 110% advertise that because that's my work. But I am not going into what I share regularly with the intention of a gain on the other side. I want to provide free value and I want to do it in a way that feels authentic and feels good and comfy. And I think that's really the difference in a lot of ways. Like, I know people who share about their offerings every single day, or every single piece of content is strategic to generate a sale. And I just don't like that. And I think part of it's due because I don't like it because I can see right through that. I can see immediately through that when someone's doing that. But also my Instagram it did not start as a sales opportunity. It started as just this is a place I want to share about my life and my passion and wellness and health and so forth. So for it to pivot into anything more than that, I just felt weird about it. I just didn't want to do it. And I think it just takes a lot of the pressure off of me. Like, I don't want to go onto social media and be like, "Oh, like what do I have to do today? What strategy do I need to put in so that I make a sale?" I just don't like that. So, just know every single thing that I share, while there obviously are going to be times where I educate and then offer labs, or I'm going to mention my work, whatever the case is. Yes, obviously there's going to be some of that happening, but my primary mission on social media is not that. So, back to my original point, the growth I've had on TikTok, I'm really just looking to build a community. I'm looking to create a platform for myself, build my brand, and whether or not clients come from that, that's great, but the point of the story was I've had a significant influx in my wait list. And so as a result of that, June is about to be really busy with, new clients, onboarding new clients, having client consults, all that good stuff. So there is not 1 ounce of me, not 1 ounce of my being that is complaining about this in any shape or form. Not one bit. I'm so happy. This is what I've dreamt of, to have interest in my work. It's just keeping myself organized and knowing my limits and setting boundaries and all that I need to be really intentional about. So, anyways, let's get into today's podcast episode. I thought this would be fun to do a Q&A. I've done this before, and I probably should do this more often just because I feel like this is just a fun way for me to explore different random topics in health and wellness that I've either been asked about, or I put a question box up on Instagram, so that, generated some questions, and then DMs I've gotten, client questions, all the things, because I'm certain that at least one of these questions and one of these topics will resonate, and it gives me the opportunity to kind of bounce around between different topics and just kind of give my insights and give my thoughts on it. So, let's get into today's Q&A. Welcome back to the table and let's eat. Welcome to Let's Eat. I'm your host, Emily, certified holistic health coach, functional nutrition expert, and self-proclaimed wellness enthusiast, here to meet you at the intersection of physical and mental health, the space within which we become well. This podcast is meant to explore all areas of mind and body wellness, designed to offer you the integrative knowledge, behavioral strategies, and mindset shifts necessary to uplevel your health and feel better today. We'll explore nutrition, sleep, movement, self-care and stress management, habits and routines, self-development, gut health, mental health, and more. I am so happy that you're here. Welcome to the table. Let's eat. So, setting the scene a bit, I have a coffee with me. I have this Truvani grass-fed vanilla protein in it. It is my new favorite thing. I needed to take a step back from the salted caramel, which, I love that, but I think I just overdid it. And so that I also ran out of. So I'm just letting that fall to the back burner for right now, and I'll reorder eventually. But for now, I like this one, and I have espresso in it and cashew milk. So that is what I have here. I have lots of water with me. Talia is with us today. She is in the next room with a bone, and I hope that she will stay there. I was going to bring her to daycare, but I don't have enough time between my calls today before I have to go to teach, and so I can't. I mean, I have enough time, but I think it would just stress me out too much. So she will go to daycare on Wednesday. That's the day that I definitely need her to go to daycare. And for today, I am just going to manage her presence and hope she cooperates. And we're getting into today's episode early in the morning. It's not super early, but 7:22 a.m. and this beautiful Monday morning. I'm feeling all of the new week, new month feels, as in not feels, as in motivation. I thrive on a new month. I thrive on a new week, on a new year. I love the novelty of it. I just love the energy that I feel. So, just feeling really good about this month, not only in the sense of things that have changed for me personally with work. I have more time, a little bit more time now. I shared in last week's episode, I'm going to be off the calendar at the restaurant. So now my work is only centered on my work, which is pretty cool and a big step for me. And I just couldn't have come at a better time to make that choice because things are just obviously where they are now, and it's great. It's just, finding a balance, always finding a balance if that exists. If that exists, I'll let you know. If I can find it, I'll let you know. I do want to though be sure I'm spending time and here you're probably going to be like rolling your eyes at me, but making time for me, reading, especially, with everything that's coming this month, I need to find a good balance. So, Yap and Walk is on the agenda this month, and I did my first official Yap and Walk outside of my county yesterday, and it went so well. And I have more upcoming, and then all sorts of different things this month. So, let's get into today's podcast episode. We're now well into the episode, so I'm sorry that I kept you waiting for so long, but let's talk Wellness Q&A because this is just a good opportunity for me to dive into questions and topics all over the board that you are interested in or that might resonate with you. And so I think, like I said, I should do this more often, maybe every quarter I should do it because I think it gives just something different. And it's fun for me to kind of give my thoughts and insights on different health trends and things in wellness. So the first question I got was, what are my thoughts on vibration plates? And I got this question a lot. A lot. I've gotten this question probably 4 times. And I think a lot of it is this is really big now on social media. And so maybe people see it. I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with vibration plates. Okay. This is my take. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think, yes, it can serve a purpose for lymphatic drainage. There's other benefits that come along with it. But do I think it is like the end all be all for health? No, not one bit. So to me, and this is how I feel about any biohacking tool. Okay. This is how I feel about mouth taping, red light, vibration plates. What else? Even like aura rings, maybe even. I don't know. I feel this way about everything that is, supposed to up level your health or optimize your health. If you are not securing the foundations first, do not put money into a vibration plate before you're putting money into your grocery bill. Do not get a vibration plate before you're putting money into an investment to move your body. Do not get a vibration plate until you get your sleep in order. Do not do that. Just don't. It's not to say that there's no point, but there kind of is no point because you're missing out on really what is true health. And all those things might be the more boring, monotonous things that require you to be consistent, but a vibration plate is not going to solve all your problems if all those other things are not secured and not foundationally sound. I think too, you can manually lymphatic drain, so through lymphatic massage or through like gua sha or dry brushing. There's a lot of other ways to promote that don't require you to buy a plate. So that's kind of my take on that. Obviously, to each their own. And if they want to go in that direction and grab one and, see how it goes for them, by all means. Like I said, I don't think it's hurtful or harmful. I don't think it's bad in any way. I just think we are far too embedded in this idea of like that's going to solve all the things. That's going to fix it all. That's going to be the solution. And that's really incorrect. So that's my take there. I think I'm not going to knock anyone who is trying to invest in their health. Not one bit. That's not ever going to be the case. I think any level of investment is an investment, and I admire that and I support that, but I think we have to kind of look at, like I've talked about, the hierarchy, right? Where there's some foundational needs before we move into anything else. And usually people are missing that. And I've been seeing this and it's driving me up a wall. I've been seeing people on TikTok promote some of these Symbiotica supplements. I love Symbiotica. So the brand itself, I love it, but they're promoting their glutathione and their colostrum as the reason that Alex Earl, who is, for those of you who don't know, she's a very well-known influencer, why she's so trim and has no bloat. And, just like my gut is healed, my bloat is gone, my stomach's flat. Like, it is so toxic, and it takes everything in me not to comment and be like, can you stop this? And I really just don't want to, because I feel that's inappropriate if, from like a business standpoint, but I want to. I think it and I want to say it because it's like one of the, like, once again, it's one of those things that are just very inaccurate and inappropriate for her or for, whoever to make these claims as if it's, a like cure all. So that's how I feel. And I'm standing on that. And let me know if you like your vibration plate, because that's, I personally probably wouldn't get one, but I think it's just, it's obviously just based on preference and where I'd rather put my money. But if that's something that you're drawn to, I support you. Next, this was something that I wanted to share on, because I did share on social media, but I wanted to talk again about it on the podcast, about high cortisol versus low cortisol. And I think the reason I want to speak on this is because of the fact that it is very misleading on social media, because everyone thinks they have high cortisol, and I may have talked about this on the podcast, honestly. But it's this idea that we are all dealing with high cortisol, and that we want cortisol the lowest possible, and that we want to get rid of cortisol, and that cortisol needs to go, and it's bad and it's horrible, and we should all try to, what's that quote in Mean Girls, where Gretchen Wieners is like, and Caesar and blah, 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 and we should all just kill Caesar, or we should all just whatever. That's what it kind of sounded like. I hope someone listening understands this reference, because she's referring to Regina George, but she's talking about Julius Caesar. Anyways, we don't want to kill cortisol. We don't want to not have cortisol. For those of you who are listening, I'm certain one person is listening. You know who you are, because I know you listen to my podcast every week. She has been dealing with low cortisol for a long time. We've been working on cortisol for a long time. She knows what low cortisol feels like, and it's not fun. So we don't want low cortisol. We want healthy, modulated cortisol. We want cortisol responding in the way that it's meant to. We want cortisol responding in an effective and productive way in order for us to be safe, in order for us to respond to threats effectively, in order for cortisol to do what it has to do with our blood sugar, all of the things. So high cortisol is not the answer. High cortisol in context is the answer. Cortisol is meant to peak. It's meant to be high first thing in the morning, and it's also meant to peak and be high in moments where we're in danger. And so those are the times we want cortisol high. Now, we never want cortisol low. We want cortisol in a normal place, in a normal spot at night, right, where it goes low so that we can go to sleep and that melatonin can be released. But as far as it being low chronically, we do not want that. That is not going to feel very good. So, what are the ways that we can determine this? Well, there are hallmark symptoms of low cortisol and high cortisol, but it ranges. Low cortisol, some of the most common symptoms are trouble getting out of bed in the morning, feeling tired all day, difficulty losing weight, exercise exhausts more than it energizes. So those are some of the most common symptoms that I see for low cortisol. High cortisol is across the board. Okay, high cortisol can look like a number of different things. So it's hard to necessarily say, like, oh, this is exactly what you should notice. Obviously, you know me, I'm going to say that testing is going to be the best route to clarify this. But at the end of the day, it is important that we're not making assumptions based on what we see online, and we actually have clarity, because it's going to determine the landscape of the body. It's going to determine the environment of the body, and that is going to make a big difference in how we proceed and how you should proceed when it comes to your health, and how to navigate your adrenal dysfunction based on what your results show and based on what's truly going on, not just making assumptions that everyone has high cortisol, everyone has low cortisol, or we want to lower cortisol at all costs. So, my moral of the story here is don't assume, and come test with me. That is the moral of the story. Okay, that is the moral of this story. Next, what got you into this field? Oh boy. Okay, how long do you have? Because this is, no, I'm just kidding. This has been a journey. Let me just say, and I'm not going to give the full journey itself, but I am going to give the spark notes and kind of just explain to you what brought me here. So, I went through my bachelor's in psychology. I got my master's in clinical mental health counseling. I was working with the intention of, well, first and foremost, I interned with the intention of becoming an eating disorder therapist. And that, I think the reason I was doing that was because at the start of my master's program, I had a girlfriend of mine. I remember this moment. We were in Washington, D.C. Why were we in Washington, D.C.? Why did we go there? Oh, I guess my one girlfriend lived there. Yeah, I guess that's what it was. I guess that's what, yeah, okay. I'm like, why were we there? My one girlfriend lived in DC, and so two of my girlfriends and I drove down to visit her, and it was the beginning of my master's program, and we were talking I remember being in the car, and my one girlfriend said to me, well, why don't you get your master's in mental health and do like an eating disorder program because, you like nutrition and you're in mental health. So I said, yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So shout out to Audrey because she was the one that she was the one that kind of mentioned that. Now, in retrospect, it's nutrition is not what eating disorder care is. Eating disorder care is largely emotional, largely a mental health issue. It is the deadliest mental health disorder because there's obviously a very big physical component to it, but nutrition isn't necessarily what's necessary. If you are an eating disorder dietitian, this is what I've learned in retrospect, then yes, you want to obviously have that mental health understanding and knowledge, but then also you have the nutritional side of things. But as a mental health therapist, my job is not to work nutritionally. My job is to work with the client in the mental capacity, and then I refer out or I collaborate with a eating disorder dietitian. But anyways, that was my plan. So in that journey, I went through my master's and I never felt super aligned. My program didn't necessarily specialize or didn't give the opportunity for me to specialize in eating disorder. Eating disorders were very, very briefly touched on. And I was in contact with my advisor throughout the program about, okay, like I'm going to have to go after my master's to get formal training in this because it's not something that I can, I get here. So anyways, went into internship, ended up interning at a eating disorder center. At that point, I started my holistic health coaching certification through my master's. So I started at the same time, and at this point with each semester that passed, I became more and more aware of this was not what I wanted to do. This is not what I want to do. And I wanted to do more nutrition for mental health. And by the end of my program, I had finished my internship. My final presentation for school was all about nutrition for mental health. And that was really what I wanted to do. So upon getting an offer for a job at this clinic or at this site, among another number of other reasons, I talked about this on social media the other day about, and for those of you who have been here since I graduated in 2021, which is wild. It feels like it was just yesterday, but I graduated in 2021. I had a really dreadful experience, and had a lot to do with the supervisor I was working for. And so I was able to tell her, yeah, like, thank you for the job offer. And I understand that this would make the most sense for me to take this job, but no, thank you. I'll have to pass. So anyways, I was going to bartend all summer, ended up getting a job at a practice that was looking for a clinician who was interested in nutrition for mental health, which I'll never forget that moment. I was sitting in the driveway with Lou and my dad's, getting some sun, and I was perusing Indeed, and sure enough, this came up, and that was for me. So I went and applied, got the job, and the process from there was pretty seamless. And I worked there for about a year and a half. I ended up just really burning out, and it was just not what I had. I mean, it's not that it wasn't what I had hoped for, but it certainly wasn't what I wanted it to be. And I think I just had to be a little bit patient, and I just wasn't willing to be patient with it. I was in the process of creating a program that was centered on nutrition and mental health. So like that was underway. It just, I wasn't doing the work that I wanted to do. And it was really hard to navigate all of that. And at the same time, my business was picking up. So now I'm spending too much time here. So anyways, I resigned in November 2022. I didn't give myself a choice. I said, this is, you're going to start your business and you're going to get into your business and you're going to figure it out and you're going to do it. And that's going to be your only option. And that's it. Like, you have bartending to back you up, but at this point, like your business is what you're doing. So you're going to figure it out one way or another. And so I did. So anyways, over the course of those several years to follow, I realized I continued to hit brick walls with clients where I was doing all the things nutritionally and, guiding them, but the testing was what I was missing. And I would refer out to a doctor or a chiropractor. He's in across the border in Pennsylvania. Such a nice guy. And he took on a couple of my clients to do lab testing with. But then I was like, what the heck? Why? This is something I could do, Like it's kind of like, well, I could continue to refer out to this person, which is great for him. And I like the relationship we have, or I could just go do this myself. So if there's one thing about me, it is I am ambitious. I'm a go-getter. And if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do something, right? So that's what I did. So I got my certification to do the labs. It took me December of 24 to June or July of 25. I took a little bit of a hiatus there when I lost Lou, and that, which honestly I still completed it pretty quickly because I think they average is like 9 to 12 months. Graduated last July, and here we are almost a year later. And this is what I love, and I love doing it, and it's changed my business. I'm just such a different practitioner now. My business is different. It's been great. So that's a little bit about my journey and how I got here. In the midst of that, I've, become a Pilates instructor. I actually just signed up to become a personal trainer. That's new development. And so fleshing out my business in a lot of different ways to be most well-rounded and to be able to support my clients the best. That's obviously always the goal. So that is my journey. That's my story in a nutshell. So the next question that I have here is, I can't lose weight no matter what I try. This is a very common question that I get. And I think this is super rooted in the mentality of calories in, calories out, or being in a caloric deficit, or moving more, eating less, that type of energy. And I think, unfortunately, this is exceptionally damaging, especially for women, and especially for women who are still cycling, who still have their periods. And this is where I tend to have lots of different thoughts about it, and it takes a lot of mental kind of restructuring in order to move past a lot of this kind of frame of mind that a lot of people struggle with or navigate. It is so incredibly common. So many people feel this way or have this struggle, and I think we need to start being more aware of what other influences create an environment where weight loss is inhibited. And that is lots of different environments. I mean, when the body does not feel safe, when the body is inflamed, when the body is metabolically unhealthy, which 93% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy, it is going to be much more challenging to lose weight. And I mean, I think I should have said this before, every person's very different. But the solution, and I want you to hear this loud and clear, okay? I want you to hear this loud and clear. The solution to your weight loss, to having weight loss, is not moving more and eating less. In fact, you're probably not eating enough. And you're probably damaging your metabolism more. And you're probably making your body go into storage mode, which means fat storage mode. And you're hurting yourself, and you're creating a vicious cycle. Now, I want to be sure I'm not trying to make you out to be a bad guy, right? Like, you're not a bad guy. You're doing what you were taught is what's going to be effective. It can become a little bit obsessive, right? It can become a little bit disordered. And that's something else I want to be very cautious of and very sensitive to, that, this can become a little bit of a fixation and a little bit, damaging, both in a mental and physical way. But the solution is almost never, especially if you've gone about this in a way that is healthy, right? Where you've kind of calculated where you should fall calorically, you know, and what kind of deficit you should be in. If you're not having success, the solution is not cutting more and moving more. The solution is, why is this symptom happening? Symptoms like weight loss resistance are symptoms. That is a symptom. So, if you are having trouble with this, you have to look at what's going on metabolically, what's going on with my thyroid, what is going on in all of these departments that might impede my body's ability to want to lose weight or to comfortably lose weight, and then use that information to guide your next steps. It is not purely calories in, calories out, and I'm so frustrated by that narrative because of how harmful it is, because we are withering away in terms of our health for the expense of weight loss. We're still at the same weight, we're not losing any weight, and yet our health is in shambles, and it just creates all sorts of other issues. Your body will lose weight if it is in a position that it can, right? Like, your body will lose excess weight if it's in a position that it can, and you have to just create the right circumstances in order for it to do it, but it won't if it doesn't feel safe. So this is really what I want you to focus on if you're on a weight loss journey. I think this is where this whole, like, oh, well, GLP-1s are a great solution and I can't lose weight. I've tried for a month and now I'm going to go that route. To each their own. And I think GLP-1s can be used in certain cases. Certain people are candidates for it, and I think that's great, but at the end of the day, that is not the solution, because at the end of the day, the dysfunction will still be there when you decide to come off. So you have to really dive deeper into why is this happening? And then go from there. The next question, which is a question I get a lot, I also hear this a ton on consult calls, is, drumroll, please. No, I'm kidding. I went dairy and gluten free to try and fix my gut issues, but it isn't working. Or I went dairy and gluten free and it helped for a minute and then it returned. Now, this is going to really shift kind of the way you see this approach. This is a very band-aid focused approach. Okay, you might look at it as thinking like, oh no, this is not traditional healthcare. This is, more whole body focus. Yes, it is. It is one step in that direction, but it is still considered a band-aid approach. And the reason being is because when you remove these foods that are potentially inflammatory, right? Like, potentially inflammatory, potentially problematic, you are only doing the first step in the process. So it's kind of like, I don't know, what's a good I don't know, I got to think of a good analogy for this. I can't think of it off the top of my head. You're only taking one step. There are other steps that require you on the other side to actually do the work and understanding what's going on underneath the surface. So when we remove things like alcohol, sugar, gluten, dairy, or foods that we just feel intolerant to, maybe our body just doesn't agree to it, the solution is not to remove those foods and then suddenly find healing on the other side, or just go on our merry way and not do anything. The goal is to say, okay, now that I've brought these foods out of my diet, now it's about doing the work to heal. Because, and ultimately, and this is very person to person, right? I don't want to say there's, one size fits all to this, but it's very person to person in the sense of, ultimately, we want to get to a place where you can have gluten and feel comfortable. You can have dairy and feel comfortable. You can have these things and feel comfortable. Your body is receptive to them a little bit more than maybe the way it was before. Not bringing it back in if you are very symptomatic. I think it's wise to just moderate it, or, get some support there. But at the end of the day, it's not just about removing these things and saying, yeah, this is it. I think with certain clients, I think of, gluten is just not their friend. It's just not their friend. I think in some cases, for those who have celiac disease or a non-celiac gluten sensitivity, that is just something you have to just keep out, because that's just, your body's just not okay with it. But not in all cases is that the case. And so I want to encourage you that if you are on a journey and you are removing foods because you feel that your body doesn't agree with them, the goal is not to remove them and then never have them again. I mean, like I said, it's very case specific. And so I don't want to say there's a one size fits all fit here, formula here. But what I am saying and what I am suggesting is, it is very person to person, and removing these foods First and foremost, removing these foods, I've heard this before. Well, I've removed it for a month and I didn't notice a difference. Okay, great. But you have to follow up with the work on the other side, because even if you don't notice a difference, it's still possible that those foods were not suitable for you, and it's possible that your gut was impacted by those foods, and so it's better off just taking them out than doing the gut work on the other side, even if you're not symptomatic. I know for me, I'm not symptomatic to dairy. I'm not symptomatic to gluten. So I don't have trouble with them. But do I minimize them? Dairy recently I have a ton, just because I've been doing more of my own journey and my own gut work, which I'll talk more about in a couple weeks on my Healthiest Self episode. But the gluten piece I just minimize in general, just because I'm not someone, I just know it's abrasive to the gut lining. It's directly contributing to leaky gut. So why would I expose myself to it? So whether or not you have success removing it with feeling better, great. If you feel better, that's awesome. If you don't feel better, just know that there is more on the other side that can be done to feel better, and it's not just going to be, oh, I just remove these foods and everything's going to be okay again, if that makes sense. So my kind of guidance for you is testing is always going to be the best route. I'm just going to put that out there. But removing gluten and dairy can be very, very, very effective. But that's not it. That's just, there's more to it. That's just one step out of the 100 steps that is likely going to be necessary in order for you to actually heal. So just want to put that out there. I think we get the guidance. Oh, and some healthcare providers are saying to people, why don't you try removing dairy? Why don't you try removing gluten? And I think I'm glad that they're doing that, but it's not comprehensive. Like, it's kind of like, it's, I don't, I really want to find a good analogy to this, but I'm having a lot of trouble. It's like, you're giving me one piece to the puzzle. That's like, maybe this is the analogy. You're giving me one piece to the puzzle, and then that's it. Like, I need all the pieces to the puzzle so that I can actually I can solve the puzzle, right? So that is my guidance for you. If you are on a journey and if this is relevant to you, this is my best guidance for you is, yes, you can absolutely remove these foods, see how you feel, see how your body responds. A lot of people do find success in, removing these foods and losing weight or reducing inflammation, or the digestion improves, which is great, but don't forget there is more follow-up work to do so that that change can sustain. So, my next question is organic really that important? I have I have a take on this. So, let's kind of categorize this. What would be considered optimal? Optimal is yes, prioritize organic. That would be my suggestion if you have the means to do that, if you have the access to do that. Now, what is realistic? Okay, we just talked about what's optimal. What is realistic? Realistic is we don't we do not live in a world or a country where economically all organic is plausible, is feasible. And guess what? If you stress out about being all organic, what is that going to do? That is going to cause more harm than good, because the stress about getting everything organic is always going to be more harmful, more toxic than just having produce and washing it and just calling it a day, even if it's conventional produce. So, my short and sweet answer to that is do the best you can. Check out the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 by the Environmental Working Group. Try and prioritize, the Clean 15 are the produce that you are, capable of buying conventional, because they're either like avocado, for example. Avocado is protected by a shell, by skin that's pretty thick. So it's not going to be as pressing for you to buy organic as would a strawberry. Same with like a pomegranate or a banana. All of these have protection, so the concern is maybe less there. The Dirty Dozen, however, commonly on the Dirty Dozen include strawberries, bell peppers, celery, I think. Focusing on the produce that is on that list and buying organic there would be my suggestion first and foremost. I think cleaning your produce is going to always be a suggestion I make. But is it better to have conventional broccoli in comparison to thinking, well, if I can't get organic broccoli, I need to get no broccoli? No. Buy the broccoli, wash the broccoli, enjoy it. Buy conventional, buy organic, buy frozen, do what you got to do. At the end of the day, it is produce nonetheless, and I cannot stand the fear mongering that comes with this topic. So, that is all I'm going to say about that. I'm not going to go any further into it. That's how I feel. That's my take. And that's my guidance for you. Next question. What are my thoughts on intermittent fasting? Okay, well, This is a question I've gotten many, many a time, and I do have some thoughts on it. So let's get into it. So, my thoughts include the following: it is not meant for everyone. Definitely, definitely not meant for everyone. It is, it can be pretty harmful for women who are premenopausal, so those who are still having a cycle. It can be useful for women who are postmenopausal, women who are, and men who are maybe diabetic. I've read that that's useful. Men have a completely different physiology, so that's going to look differently for them than it is for women. But it is far too generalized as being a good option. And I think it is one of the, and yes, all health is individual, but I think it is one of those things that, like, for example, you can say a fermented food is good for most people. Now, it might not be good for someone who has histamine issues. It might not be good for somebody who has overgrowth of some kind. But that's like, generally speaking, we can say probiotic rich foods are good for us. Intermittent fasting is one of those examples that it is very opposite side of the spectrum. Like, it's very, 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 very different for, different populations. I had an experience with a client of mine. She came to me because she was missing her cycle, and she spent a lot of time fasting. She's early 20s, a lot of time fasting, a lot of time exercising in a fasted way, in a fasted state, and she lost her period. And that is what will happen. That will be a mechanism that your body does in order to prevent you from ovulating, in order to prevent you from getting pregnant, because you are not in a position to maintain a pregnancy, to have a healthy pregnancy. And all the while, her she wasn't going to get pregnant. She wasn't intending to get pregnant, but it's just the body's way of protecting you by saying, yeah, this is not the state that we are feeling comfortable to conceive in. So we're going to just take away what is going to allow you to conceive. So we worked together for probably 8 to 12 weeks, I think it was, and she ended up getting her period back. We haven't checked in since maybe January of this year, so I'll have to kind of check in now that it's been almost 6 months that we've last spoken. But she, celebrated. She told me that, like, she screamed and she cried and her family got involved, and it was like this whole thing when she got her period back. But we had to work a lot on the frame of mind around eating more and around how damaging it is to fast for women, at that age. And so that's just one story, right? But I want to be very clear. Intermittent fasting can be a tool. I think there's a lot of books that talk about healthy aging and longevity, that like controlled fasting for, like, 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours a couple times a year can actually be really helpful to reset the system. So I do feel that there's caveats, but ongoing fasting, no, not for a lot of people, not for a lot of people. And I think that's one of those things that just cannot be generalized. Okay, next is one thing to stop doing for better health. Where do I even start with that? What is one thing you can stop doing for better health? Stop drinking alcohol and stop eating sugar. That's what I'm going to say. That is what I'm going to say. Stop drinking alcohol and stop eating sugar. It's largely the same thing, but we'll look at it as two separate things. Stop drinking alcohol and stop eating sugar. I'm just going to leave it at that. One thing to stop doing for better health. There is no one in this world that would not benefit from that. Now, with my background, if somebody has an addiction to alcohol extreme enough that withdrawals could be life-threatening, that is the outlier. That is the caveat to that. Okay, but most people would benefit tremendously removing sugar, removing alcohol. All right, what's next? How do I know if I'm metabolically unhealthy? Okay, so I talk about this a ton on social media. 93% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. That means the body is not producing energy effectively, and there's some sort of malfunctioning happening there, which you can imagine this is a system-wide issue. If the body's not producing energy properly, it is, or is not able to utilize the energy coming in properly or regulate it, this is going to be a problem system wide. So, how do I know if I'm metabolically unhealthy? Well, you get blood work done. and you look at your fasting insulin, you look at your fasting glucose, you look at your HbA1c, you look at your liver enzymes, you look at all sorts of different markers that are going to help to clarify what the status of your metabolic health is. That is going to always be my suggestion. Now, another thing that can help you is, do you feel jittery throughout the day? Do you crash after meals? Do you, do you eat a lot of refined sugar throughout the day? That's not going to necessarily determine that you're metabolically unhealthy, but might explain why you feel the way that you do. Is your hunger kind of inconsistent? Are you having crashes mid-afternoon? There's a lot of different indicators based on your symptomology and your experience throughout the day that might determine or might reinforce metabolic dysfunction. So I always say, first and foremost, symptoms are messages, but let's correlate those symptoms with labs. Go get your lab work done. 93% of Americans have some sort of issue, so you might fall into that category. And if you need help and support, or you need someone to order your labs, you know where to find me. Okay, my last question before I wrap up for today is, what's one health habit you'll never give up? Well, this is a hard one. This is a hard one. I think one health habit that I will never stop working on, I guess I'll say, is nervous system support. I think at the end of the day, stress and managing our stress and taking time to decompress and disconnect and to just be is going to be the most useful of all of the health habits that are out there. And so that is going to be my commitment, forever, is in the midst of all the things I want to accomplish. And as life becomes crazier, I'm sure as I get older and children come into the picture and whatnot, things are just going to be more and more chaotic. And I'm prone to that, just being the way that I am. But making it a top priority to slow down and to disconnect and do the best I can in that. And as I mentioned, that is a continual work in progress. And I'm sure as I move out of more of like a hustle season, I'm going to be able to do that. But I think more and more and more, I'm reminded of the importance of that. And so at which point do I decide as a practitioner that that is a pillar in my work and my ability to be a strong practitioner, but also the priority that I place into my health, that has to be part of that. So that is my answer. That is my final answer, is nervous system regulation, learning how to be comfortable with just being and disconnecting and not doing. I think that is one thing that I'm not afraid to admit. I have a hard time not doing, like just sitting and just being. And so that, I think, is an indicator that I need it and that I have to work through that. So that is something I'm gonna put out there. One health habit you'll never give up. I think it's more, I should reframe it and say, what's one health habit you'll never give up working on? That is nervous system support. No doubt about it. Now, a few other things I think I'll add in there too. Movement. That's an obvious one. What a game changer that is for me as a human being, as a practitioner, as just someone, as a human being, period, for my mental and my physical health. I think sleep. I mean, these are all obviously foundational, but sleep, no doubt. I think that's huge. Reading, I would consider that a health habit. I won't give that up. What else? Oh my goodness, there's so many things. Alcohol, abstaining from alcohol, at least not having it maybe as regularly as I did many years ago. There's lots of different things here. Lots of different things, and they all serve a very important purpose in the kind of construction of my health. And so that is going to stay. Those are going to stay. And I could probably go on and on and on about it, but that is my answer to this final question in our Q&A. So, I'm hopeful that you enjoyed today's podcast episode. I think it's just a fun way to kind of break up the episodes. I will say, and I know I said this last episode, this month I am going to get people on the calendar for interviews and for guests. So, I am looking forward to that because that helps a ton. It can be a little bit, I mean, I feel at this point, I don't have any shortage of topics to talk about. And that's pretty impressive given I've been doing this for now how long? 2.5 years? 2.5 years. So the fact that I still have ammo is pretty is pretty great, and it's just coming from new experiences or things I'm seeing that inspire the topics. But I am planning to bring on some guests in the next few months, especially because there's so many people out there that I want to come on the podcast. And I am just doing you a disservice by not having them on because they're incredible and they're so knowledgeable and they can share so much insight on topics that I just probably couldn't even scratch the surface on. So I want to be sure that I spend the time seeking out those individuals. So that is to follow. But here is your send off. I wish you nothing but health and wellness through the month of June. I plan to do more episodes like this in the future, so please feel free to message me with questions that I would love to share on the podcast, or just give my insights on, even if it's not like I don't know, like even if it's not a kind of black and white statement and it's more just like, what are your thoughts on this, or how do you feel about this? I'm happy to kind of share on that, and this is the spot for me to do that. And like I said, going into June, I hope your health and your wellness is on the forefront of your mind, on the forefront of your path. If you ever have the need for functional labs or you want to work together, the link is always in the show notes, so feel free to go there. And thanks again for being here. Thanks for joining me back at the table. And until next time, be well.